are we, you ask? We are the podcast seeking out a better understanding of all things paranormal. We'll have guests from all backgrounds in the paranormal with us along this journey, with Q&As for listeners to ask paranormal experts their questions, and open call-in nights to let listeners discuss their thoughts and experiences on the paranormal. But the question remains, can the unexplained be explained? Or can the paranormal be nothing more than perception? So, close the curtains and turn out the lights and join us on the journey into the paranormal. This is Paranormal Engaged with your host, Adam Young, coming to you from the beautiful Evergreen State.
And welcome back to Paranormal Engaged. Tonight we have JC Gordon with us as he takes us through the journey of his 22-year of dealing with the infinite intelligence and what destiny has brought to him. Welcome, JC. How are you this evening?
Hey, Adam, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. So, JC, what got you started on this 22-year journey?
That's a great question. It was the most profound moment and incident that ever happened in my life. I'm an ex-banker. I'm as left-brained as one could be. 24 years ago, I was out bucking some wood with a chainsaw, and the chainsaw kicked back, went through my throat, cut my throat wide open, and to make a long story short, about an hour later, I died on the emergency room table. When I was dead, all of a sudden, one moment, I was looking up at the doctor on my left, the nurse on my right. The next moment, I'm on top of the room. I'm looking down at the backs of the heads, and I'm looking at my throat just gashed wide open, looking like a raw piece of steak, and blood everywhere. And it was that experience. Now, I was only dead for 2 to 3 minutes in time, but where I went into the mind of Source, the mind of infinite intelligence, and I stayed in there, which is timelessness, not time. Time is but a moment of timelessness. I stayed there for what seemed like months and months, and I certainly didn't want to come back from that. But that's the event, Adam, that got me in there into this, and simply because I realized that when we move on out of this element of time,
Mm-hmm.
we're not taking anything with us. We're not taking our car, our bank account, our clothes. We're not even taking our bodies. It's just our energy, our life force that moves on.
Excellent. So what did you experience seconds before you died?
Well, it was about an hour before I died. Seconds before I died, I was looking 1 second up at the doctor, then the nurse on the right side. But I want to tell you something that happened just a few seconds after the chainsaw had gone through my throat, because this was, to me, the most profound experience I had before I died, and that was this, Adam. The chainsaw had gone through my throat, and I never felt a thing. And to this day, I've never felt anything. But it actually hung up on me. It was a terribly rainy day, and I had a sweatshirt on and my shirt on, but the chainsaw hung up on my sweatshirt.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember looking down and seeing, my white sweatshirt turning red from all the blood that was pouring out. But it was while that chainsaw was still on me that I intuitively and internally heard a voice and that said, "Everything's going to be okay. I have a purpose for your life." So, that happened with the chainsaw still on me, on my sweatshirt. But that was the most profound experience that I had, Adam, before I died.
So when you passed away, you went somewhere and you named it the hereafter. What is that?
Right. Well, it's the great thought. It's a great thought, the infinite intelligence, the consciousness of everything. And if I could describe it very, very simply, Adam, it's like the invisible strings behind the scenes that are making everything happen. Because nothing in life happens by chance. Everything is predestined. Everything is fated to happen exactly as it does. You know, to putting on your socks in the morning, to getting up out of bed, to every single event that everything. Look around. It's all fated to have happened in the great thought exactly as it has, and that's what infinite intelligence is. It's the behind the scenes strings of the great thought that is really pulling everything. And time, as we know it, as the Big Bang says, it happened began 13.75 billion years ago, or in the beginning. I was also in those moments when they actually happened, because my afterlife experience took me beyond the normal places where other people have died and gone to and come back, or where our life energy goes to and comes back again. It Because what I found out was that what was revealed to me was that infinite intelligence is asexual. Now, what I mean by that is that it is a consciousness that is both male and a consciousness that is female. And time as we know it, or this universe as we know it, is connected with other parallel universes within the womb or female aspect of time. But where I went in my afterlife experience, Adam, was I went beyond all of that. I went into the male element of consciousness, the great thought that existed before anything ever began. And it took me into the events that happened before time began. In other words, those events were literally the pre-planning stages of time. I literally saw that happen. And then it moved into the first few seconds of the Big Bang, which I was also in there, that first spark of life that happened. So that's where I went, and that's what my mission has been ever since I've come back from the afterlife, which I never wanted to, but I had to come back, and here I am, and we're talking right now. That's not by chance either.
So, you were downloaded to the deepest mysteries about everything, and you were sent back to disclose them. What were those deepest mysteries?
How much time you got?
We have all the time in the
uh,
world.
okay. Those deepest mysteries are that nothing happens by chance. Everything is fated to happen exactly the same way, including this unbelievable circumstance that's been happening in the last 2 or 3 months in the world today of being isolated from everything. That is all predestined to happen in the great thought and worked out exactly the same way it has. And so what the deepest mysteries are is that from the minutest atom of something to the everythingness of every parallel universe, which is trillions of other universes like ours, fabricated together, are all one thing happening at the same time. And that is all engineered, allowed to happen, allowed to roll out exactly the way that it does through the great thought that thought it into existence. And the biggest paradox I've had about the whole thing is to me it solves what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? What came first was not time as we know it, but what came first was the great thought that it all is, which is a timelessness, simultaneous time, Einstein called it, of everythingness, everywhere, that is happening all at once. Does that make any sense?
It does. So tell us about your negotiations with the universal mind, and tell us about your negotiations with the universal mind and to remain there in the hereafter.
Well, that's a great question, Adam, because I didn't want to come back, and because when we go when we go outside of this universe, okay, when we think of traveling to way beyond the speed of light, beyond at the speed of thought, moving to the outer edge of the universe, of the last atom of the universe, the last atom of the Google of atoms that are in the universe. When we get beyond that And when it happened to me, I literally went through a light. And when I went through the light, I landed on it was like on the top of a mountain. But at that very precise moment, I knew I was home. In other words, I was at the resting place, the home of what my life force is, what everybody's life force is, what everybody's spirit is, which resides in the central canal or right in the middle of our spine, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where our life force is, and that's what left me when I died, and when I went through into and out of this universe, I went. I knew that I was home. And as I said, I was only dead for 2 to 3 minutes in time, but it felt like months and months and months and months of timelessness. But all during that time, Adam, I knew that I was home. It was a feeling of, you know, words can't describe it. Like bliss, universal love, those are just simple words in our language, but they can't describe the feeling of totality of all everythingness that I experienced. And sorry, I got a little sidetracked there, but to get back to your question of why I wrestled or had a little tussle with Source, it was that towards the end of my experience, and everything happened to me as it happened to me, Adam, was telepathic, and I'm talking about the communications. There was no audible communication like this. It was all energetically, telepathically. And I call them in my book zings, that I would receive a zing like a lightning bolt that would hit me in like where the middle of my eyes, and I would know what that was saying, and that's how I would communicate back. So that's how I had the little, I guess, disagreement with Source, was that it told me, it zinged me, and said, well, it's now time for you to go back. And I said, no, I don't want to go back. I was, because I was home there, and it said, I have to go back. I said, no, I don't want to go back. And then this was the final zing in the final 5 words it left me. I must go back, and these are the 5 words, to tell all who I am. And with that, its warmth that I was enveloped in left. And the minute that warmth left me, Adam, I knew that I had to go back. So I just literally turned around from where I was and just went back the same way that I got to, and went into my body, woke up, and, you know, that was 24 years ago.
So, when you were communicating with the Source, did you get a chance? Did it just give you all the information, or did you ask specific questions?
No, it took me into its mind. It took me into its great thought. It took me into every aspect of its great thought. Every aspect of its great thought that ever was, that is, and what will ever be. It took me into the pre-planning stages of time. That in the work that I do, I call the classroom, which is outside of the female aspect and the male aspect of its consciousness. And it was like I was at one in a multi-dimensional experience that took me everywhere. I saw everything. It took me into the pre-planning stages of time that saw that had its helpers, identified its helpers that put it all together. It took me into, and I think you may have read it in my book Beyond Consciousness, the first literal seconds of that Big Bang, or as some spiritual books say, in the beginning. It's the same event. It's the same event. It's the initial spark of energy. And so it took me into those moments, which, as science says, happened 13.75 billion years ago. It took me through that 13.75 billion year journey, not only in this universe, but in other universes as well. And it led me to these final events of time that we're in right now that are happening, why they're happening, what the outcome is going to be. And the beauty of it all, Adam, is in timelessness, it's already done. But in time that we're in now, we're just moving through it, because our concept and our reality of time that we live in is completely different than the infinite intelligence, great thought of what its timelessness, everythingness is. And it's kind of like looking at something under a microscope. You know how you look at something like under a microscope and you see, oh my goodness, it's like thousands of individual particles.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in timelessness, time is just simply one of those millions of individual particles that make up the everythingness of timeless. Does that make any sense?
It does. So
Good.
everybody has that big philosophical question, and what is the meaning of life? Do we finally have an answer for that?
Yeah. There. Boy, where do I start with that one? Do I start from the macro and work down, or do I start from the bottom and work up?
Let's go from the bottom and work up.
Okay. Let's go there. We have as individuals, we all have two consciousness. We have a mind consciousness, which we all know, right? That's how we live life. That's what we were born into.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have a heart consciousness, a heart consciousness that gives us silent whispers through our lives. I call them in my books the 12 whispers, things like intuition,
Mm-hmm.
things like insight, things like imagination. Hope and love actually come from our heart consciousness. We don't read and find our perfect mate in page 333 of a textbook, right? It's a feel that we have from the inside. And so this infinite intelligence operates and communicates to us from those frequencies. It's kind of like, do you want to listen to the AM dial or the FM dial? Well, the AM dial is the mind consciousness, but the FM dial is the sweet music that of everythingness that resides through our heart consciousness. So what is the meaning of life? Simply, it's to move that mind consciousness and put it in its proper perspective. In other words, our mind consciousness has been the locomotion that's driven everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not meant to be. It's meant to be the caboose. Okay? The heart consciousness, the everythingness that source is, that communication, the ability to be everything anywhere at any time is the consciousness that we are supposed to live life by. And that has been my mission. That has been my mission since I've come back, is to help mankind move their consciousness, their mind consciousness, out of the locomotion, out of the locomotive perspective, into the caboose perspective, and let that become one with and understand that what that heart consciousness does. Now, it's not by chance that we're all in what I call a mind prison. And what I mean by that is we are all completely controlled by the consciousness of mind. Mm-hmm. All of mankind is addicted to its drug. Its drug is its power, and its power is money, because we all need that to survive, right? And so my mission since I've come back is to help people move the mind consciousness out of the locomotion's position into the caboose perspective, and allow that infinite intelligence that comes from our heart consciousness to become a lead. And the main aspect of the journey and work that I do is to change the power of money from the detriment of mankind to the betterment of mankind. Because money is just a commodity. It's like a piece of wood, isn't it? But it's the power through the monetary elitists, through the central bankers matrix of governments, of mainstream media that really has come to the forefront in these last 3 or 4 months, that is purposely moving us further and further and deeper into our mind prison. It's all about waking up to the fact that there is more to life than what we have understood life to be. Does that make sense, Adam?
Absolutely. So we're going to kind of roll back a little bit and just kind of explain to us, what exactly is the universal mind?
The universal mind is infinite intelligence. It is that great thought. If you kind of think of say you had a piece of paper and a pen. If you were to just put a dot down, Well, that dot is time. But if you were to make a larger circle around that dot, that larger circle is what the universal mind is. It is the infinite intelligence of everythingness that is pulling every aspect of everything in time. Now, when I say is pulling every aspect in time, I just don't mean in this universe. I mean in every other parallel universe.
Mm-hmm.
It's making all of them happen exactly as it does. That's what the universal mind is. It's that, and I can never wrap my head around this, Adam, to be honest with you. But it's that initial thought that instantly got the everythingness of everything, everywhere, at once into being.
So
Does that make sense?
It does. So you talk in your book about our conscious prison. What is keeping us there, and how do we break free?
It's the we are all in our mind prison, and a great how we break free. Here's a simple overview. Have you ever seen the movie The Matrix?
Yes.
Okay, you know at the very beginning of the first series when Morpheus is talking to Neo, he gives them that opportunity. You can take the blue pill or the red pill. Well, Adam, we live in that blue pill. We live in that blue pill mind prison, and we've all been born in there, into that. We've never even known that we've had a red pill that we can have, right? So simply, it's about taking that red pill and having that red pill. And what is that red pill? That red pill is what I described earlier. That red pill is the infinite intelligence that comes through, that resonates, that communicates through our heart consciousness. It actually is an invisible string that connects with our life force, with our spirit that resides in the central canal of our spine. Okay, it's that FM communication of infinite intelligence. That's what the red pill is. And when we move into there are no limitations. Let me tell you a couple of things that happened to me, Adam. I died in 1996, so that's 24 years ago. Before I died, I was 30. Chronologically, I was coming up on my 38th birthday. And but biologically, in other words, how I was physically operating, I was probably operating like a 58-year-old, a 60-year-old. I was overweight. I needed 3 cups of coffee just to be able to walk without pain on a daily basis. I had very little energy. I had epileptic seizures. I was taking medications. But when I came back, I never took any more drugs for my seizures. And in almost 25 years, I've never had an epileptic seizure. Mm-hmm. That's an aspect that happens to people in the red pill zone. I can go on and on about how non-congenital issues have disappeared for people that I've helped to get into the red pill zone. Mm-hmm. But to me, the most profound element to me has been my biological aging. Now, I'm 62 years old chronologically, but biologically, I operate like I'm in my late 20s. I'm, running 6-minute miles. I'm working out regularly. And those two aspects right there are part of what the red pill zone does. We move into a perfection of wellness, which is without disease, which is without blemish, without darkness. But also, we move into an agelessness. It doesn't change us chronologically because tick-tock, the clock goes on, right? Mm-hmm. But biologically, we move into, and the ideal biological age for every single person on this planet right now is that of the peak years of an athlete, which is in the neighborhood of 20 to 24 years old. So those are just a couple things that happen in the red pill zone. Monetary freedom is another one. Allowing people in this red pill zone to, yes, become monetary free, to have those aspects happen, but also to change the power behind money. And it's only getting worse day by day, as everyone knows. But to change the power of money from the monetary elitists, from the central banking, from the government, from the mainstream media and put the power back into us individually, into mankind where it should be. So those are some of the key elements of what the red pill zone does. And quite frankly, Adam, there are no limitations there. There are zero limitations there, because we are all meant to be perfected into that zone, into the beautiful perfection and universal love and bliss and happiness that source is. That's where we're all moving when we change around and put our mind consciousness as the caboose and make the heart consciousness our locomotive consciousness. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So how does one transition over to the red pill? Is this just a change of a state of mind, or what exactly? How does that process work?
That's an absolutely great question, Adam. And the simple way for me to answer that is that when I'm speaking, when I speak to people, I do not speak to mind consciousness. I speak to heart consciousness. And when I speak to heart consciousness, many people have told me it creates an awakening with them. It creates an awakening. It creates an awareness within them that they all know is what truth is. Okay, so how that happening is through that kind of like bubbling up inner feeling and knowing that, oh my goodness, this is what life is all about. That comes from within, and then it's just moving people along that process, and it's different for everybody else. For everybody, it's always a different journey. I've done over tens of thousands of sessions with people over the years since I've come back, and there's no two journeys that are ever alike. It's kind of like when people die, no one has the same journey. Why does people not have the same journey? Like, because everything is infinite. If there was only like one nirvana, if there was ever only one bliss, if there was only one heaven, that would be a very limiting understanding of what the potential of everything is. And that's why they're always different for everybody. And I've led thousands of people over the last 24 years on this journey, and every single experience is different. Why is it different? And Adam, I live in the infinite intelligence zone, and so this is infinite intelligence intel that I'm kind of revealing to you. But why near-death experiences or people who have died and come back are always different is because they're meant to help the person who's died to move from what they've been doing in life to what their purpose and reality is in life. Like me, for example, I was an ex-banker, and after that, I had no inclination whatsoever to be in that left brain zone anymore, or of the mind, right? And for the last 24 years, I've allowed my heart consciousness of infinite intelligence to kind of be like my leading consciousness. And when we do that, there are no limits. To give you an example, you could come to the street corner and be completely lost. If you leave it with your mind, you got what, a 50-50 chance of turning left or right? But your infinite intelligence, when you let it lead, it's kind of like allowing that consciousness to be just 3 inches, 6 inches in front of you. You'll know to turn to the left or turn to the right. And I guarantee you, it will always be right.
So, near-death experience, what's your take on it? Is this more kind of the universal mind's way of an intervention in somebody's life?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know anybody who has had the experience that I've had. Carl Jung wrote about his experience, and people don't know that he had a near-death experience because he calls them visions. Like, he died in 44, but the term near-death experience wasn't coined by Raymond Moody until 30 years after that. So everyone has, and in Jung's, as he talks about his experience, he has some real parallels to mine, except he wasn't allowed to get as far as I went. I'm convinced that Albert Einstein had a near-death experience, or else how would a 16-year-old patent agent in the late 1800s take the world of science the way he did if he didn't have this infinite knowledge? Joseph Campbell is another one who probably had a near-death experience with the wisdom that he had as well. But near-death experiences happen so that a person can get back on track to where they're supposed to go. There is no one that I that I know of that ever went into the male aspect of consciousness like I did,
Mhm.
into the mind of source. There are many that have died and stayed within the female aspect of source, but not into the male aspect of source. Life happens within the female aspect, but I am the only person that has gone into the male aspect, and my 24-year journey, Adam, has been to rediscover the completeness of that 2 to 3 minutes when I was dead, and
Mhm.
it's literally taken me 24 years to get to that point, and right now we're literally unlocking it for many people. So it's an exciting time. Life is only beginning, that's for sure.
Right. So it sounds like you had a very interesting journey in your 24 years. So did you go and study with others with this same kind of mindset?
No, not at all. There is nobody else that has had this mindset. My experience has been vertical. If you can think of a vertical column that
Mm-hmm.
goes up, I've stayed in that zone. So many people have asked me, "Well, do you know so and so? Do you know so and so?" And I say, "No, I don't, because that wasn't where my experience has meant to be. It's meant to be in that vertical zone." So no, I did not study with anybody else. I did not follow anything else. I just stayed in that zone because I know that that is what everything is. I know that that is the reason for everything. But my experience was so vast, Adam, that be able to remember it all at once, the human mind, quite frankly, is just not capable of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so even now, after tens of thousands of experience and working with thousands of people, I dare to venture I've only been able to remember a small fraction of the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
but I do remember the end of the whole thing, which is really just beginning. The end of time connects with timelessness, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can think of where time is at right now, think of an exclamation mark. You know how you have that dot at the bottom and that long line of an exclamation mark, right?
Yes.
Well, time is that dot at the bottom. Timelessness is the rest of that line. And if you were at the top of that line and looking down, time would already be right in the middle of that line, but but we're not there yet. Time is not there yet. In other words, simultaneous time is everything that's happened at once, but we still have a gap in time to get to that timeless state. And the best way that I can describe it is my personal experience of only being dead for 2 to 3 minutes, but yet during that 2 to 3 minutes of time, experiencing the everythingness of everything everywhere. And so that's the best way that I can put it into words. Does that make sense?
It does. So mankind
Good.
is predestined to reach our moral bottom, that uh, where we are purposely guided to. So everyone can be impacted by the universal mind's 100% consciousness. What does that mean for us?
Yes.
And what is this great awakening that is coming upon us?
Well, that's a great question. I believe that right now, certainly with this COVID-19 thing that's happened to us, I believe that and everything behind the scenes that are happening to us, we've all been sheltered within, that we are now reaching the lowest depths of that depravity, and I'm talking about mankind and consciousness. Why? Because it's all been led through mind consciousness. It's all been led through mind consciousness, and there's a purpose for that, and I actually saw that, and I'm gonna go into a little bit of infinite intelligence detail here, Adam, and I don't want to lose everybody or mix anybody up, but um, in time, 12,000 years ago, in our time, everything was actually perfected at that time. In other words, the consciousness of humanity had actually become source. It was in a time that we have described it down here as Atlantis, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was that at that point in time, 12,000 years ago, and mankind had been perfected into the totality of Source. But and again, in the Great Thought, everything was ready to. I call it the wrap party that was happening 12,000 years ago to move the fetus within the female womb of time into the consciousness of Source. It was ready to happen. The date of that birth, or when the birth begins, is December 21st, 2082 at 11:11:11 GMT. That's the exact moment that time begins to be birthed into timelessness. But 12,000 years ago, the perfection of that society was already in place. And when I was in the pre-planning stages of time, I went into literally a classroom. It was like I was in my grade 12 chemistry classroom. But when I went into there were only 2 desks. They were empty. And I was like a fly on the back of the wall. And what Source did was it pulled out of itself 2 entities, a male entity that he put in one desk, a female entity that he put into the other desk. He called the female entity Lucy, and the male entity Lucifer. Those are the names that they were given. And they were the left and right hand of Source to complete its body so that its consciousness could reside. And the male aspect did that perfectly for 13.72 billion years, not only in this universe, but in every other hundreds of trillions of other parallel universes. At that point, the male role was completed and the female's role began. The female's role was to complete the consciousness aspect, while the male's role was to complete the gestation of the infinite intelligence body. So with the role of the male role done for the last 3.2 million years ago, the female aspect has been perfecting that consciousness. Ironically, from Ethiopia 3.2 million years ago, where the original bones of mankind reside, to where we're at today. But what happened 12,000 years ago was that in the Great Thought, everything had been perfected, completed. In other words, every human was Source in Atlantis. And the male aspect objected. Lucifer objected and said, I deserved the opportunity to be the consciousness as well because I put it all together. And again, all of this happened, created in the Great Thought before it all began. So this is nothing new to the Great Thought. But that's what's happened over these last 6,000 years. Mind consciousness has been controlling us. We have had, and I saw this happen in the first 2 consciousness human beings, they had their ego chip added, and the ego chip is what a chip that edges our greatness out. It is a chip that has made mankind for the last 6,000 years susceptible to the Luciferian programming that has literally brought mankind right now to its knees, to its lowest depths of depravity. And that's where we're at right now. And that's what this Great Awakening is all about. It's all about awakening out of that mind consciousness control and that mind prison, not listening to the AM dial, but into our heart consciousness, our infinite intelligence communication that will lead us into being perfected as Source in its totality. Now, Adam, I'm going to get I'm going to say something that may be a little difficult to comprehend, but it's this, and that is that whatever our journeys are to get there has already been done. In other words, the elimination of non-congenital health problems, the reversing of our biological age, our monetary freedom, all of that, we just got to get into the red pill zone and move down that yellow brick road, right? But it's our choice to do that. And anybody can choose to do it or not. It really doesn't matter. Whatever we choose is right. There's no wrong in this thing called life. It's all right because it all exists within the Great Thought.
Right. It's a predetermined plan.
Yes. It's a great thought of consciousness invisible strings that are making it all happen, including every thought that we have. Every thought that anybody ever has was all thought of in the original great thought. That is just playing itself out. And we're just literally playing itself out now in that dot of the exclamation mark, right?
Absolutely.
Nothing happens by chance. Nothing happens by chance.
All right, so let's break down into a little bit of the science here, and let's talk about what reverse velocity is, how it works, and how does that all tie into this?
Yeah, that is a great question, Adam. Remember earlier I said we have two consciousness.
Right.
We have a mind consciousness and we have a heart consciousness. Our mind consciousness works through the energy and the strings of forward velocity. In other words, if you can think of a clock at 12 o'clock, forward velocity takes thought from the 12 o'clock point down to the 6 o'clock point. And that's where we are right now in time, is at the 6 o'clock point. But at the same time, that forward velocity, which our mind consciousness knows to be true, which is true, is happening. At the same time, reverse velocity was moving from 12 o'clock down to 6 o'clock in a counterclockwise direction. In other words, it was moving from 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Mm-hmm.
Now, science knows what reverse velocity is, and I'm just going to say it in a real simple terms. Is that if let's say, Adam, you had a wine glass and you had some wine in it, and you dropped it on the floor, the wine glass would shatter and the wine would spill. Correct?
Correct.
What reverse velocity is it takes that spilt wine, that broken wine glass, and makes it all whole. So from a consciousness perspective, from a great thought perspective, the great thought is just not the forward velocity that's moved down from 12 to 6 clockwise. It's the reverse velocity consciousness that has moved counterclockwise down from 12 to 6. In other words, right now, where we are at is we are at that 6 o'clock point in time, the depths of depravity, where forward velocity is meeting reverse velocity. In other words, consciousness is moving out of mind and into heart. Okay, the FM dial is that reverse velocity consciousness frequency that leads us. But here's how it leads us, Adam. It leads us from being that broken wine glass and spilt wine into being that perfected, beautiful wine glass with the wine in it. And that's already done. All we have to do is move our mind consciousness to the caboose position and let our heart consciousness lead. And as we listen to that FM dial of consciousness, of infinite intelligence that leads through those 12 whispers of insight, imagination, hope, and love, that's what's going to allow us to stay in that reverse velocity flow and be perfected from that broken wine glass and spilt wine, which all of humanity is at now, into that perfected wine glass, which already is. In other words, I've talked more of a horizontal understanding of what the infinite intelligence great thought is. But it's just not, it's more than just horizontal, it's vertical. And that's the verticalness of it, is that the beginning point of the Big Bang at 12 o'clock is also the completion point, where we're perfected into the totality of source and everything. That's already done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, where everything comes full circle.
Everything comes full circle. Circle is just an image of completion. And so right now in that circle, the circle is there. The reverse velocity consciousness is kind of like a dotted line of it, right? We've got to make that connection by moving out of mind into heart. Once that connection is made, we're going to start to fill in that dotted lines of the reverse velocity consciousness. It's already there. It's a path that's already there. It's already made. It already exists, and that is the reason why I came back. That was the reason why I came back, to help people to wake up to these possibilities and the truth, or the picture of infinite intelligence, what it is and what it's doing.
So until now, reverse velocity is possible on everything except humanity. Is that actually the case, or can it?
No,
be?
it's not. Up until now, it has been the case because no one's ever known about this before, right?
Mm-hmm.
I died in '96. Before that, before my experience, no one ever knew about this, and I'm sure no one ever knows about this now. I've come back, and I have coaches around the world that are helping others do this as well. But no, this has never been known before. Right now, everybody living right now, and again, I'm going to say something really, really profound that you've never heard before.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone living today, anyone living today, doesn't have to die. In other words, forward velocity has only brought us pain. It's only brought us stress. It's only brought us death, right? But now we are living in a time, and we're only a mere 65 years away from actually 62 years away from being birthed into that totality of everything. And life will be completely different. We will not be living in that blue pill reality, that horizontal blue pill reality that has a predominant energy of fear and negativity. That's going to be gone, because we are all going to be in this red pill zone, protected from all those energies, and ascending our way up into the totality of everything. So, yes, in the past, everyone has died because no one has ever known this before. And so, because everyone has lived in the blue pill zone. And that's just the way it is, right?
Right.
But that isn't the way that it's going to be moving forward. Why? Because we're moving into reverse velocity consciousness, which is already that predestined pathway to take the broken wine glass and spilt wine and make it whole. We no longer have to be that spilt wine on the floor. We no longer have to be a shattered wine glass, which is what we're all at right now. We will be putting ourselves together piece by piece by piece. And I talked about a couple of those pieces and how they glue together. Reversing your aging, eliminating every issue that's not non-genetic, right?
Right.
And here's the big one. This is what moves everything along. It's an individual's personal monetary freedom that takes money from the darkness detriment in the central bank matrix, through the monetary elitists, through the governments, through the mainstream media, into mankind. Because life is about freedom and bliss. And for the last 6,000 years, no one has ever had either. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're moving into. And the beauty of it is, it's already done. We just got to say, yeah, I want it. That's all we have to do. You have to listen to that wee small voice from within that's going to awaken you to the understanding that this is how it is. Because that's the very essence, the life force of all we are, knows this is how it is. Because every life force was part of making it all happen. In other words, we are that great thought. We're not this limiting mind consciousness construct that we think that's all there is. We are everything. We just got to make the decision to want to be everything.
Right. So we've been talking about time and timelessness. So let's kind of move over and let's talk about the blueprint of time. So apparently has 10 seals on it. What are these seals and what do they represent?
They are aspects of how the great thought in the pre-planning stages of time taught to Lucy and Lucifer what was going to happen. Okay, those seals are the forward velocity of time from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and the reverse velocity of time of consciousness in a counterclockwise direction from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. The seals, that information, and Adam, I have to say, I'm really, really enjoying this because you've done your homework, and it's so nice to talk to somebody who's done some homework.
Thank you.
But those seals were how timelessness was presented before time began.
Mm-hmm.
So they were put in that perspective. That's from a top-down perspective,
okay.
But from a bottom-up perspective, it's the forward velocity from 12 down to 6, and the reverse velocity in a counterclockwise direction down 12 to 6. But we are at that 6 o'clock moment in time now, where people are about to wake up, either because they're fed up with everything that's going on, and that they're being impressed by their spirit, by their life force,
mm-hmm.
with what I'm saying. Because that's when I'm speaking, I'm the voice to the spirit. I'm the voice to a person's life force. This makes, if people are trying to understand what I'm saying through the mind right now, Adam, it's like speaking gobbledygook to them. They will have turned this show off a long time ago. They would not have been able to get this far, because the mind, through the beta frequencies that it operates in, through the AM dial beta frequencies it operates in, has no idea what I'm saying. It's only the heart consciousness theta frequencies that are able to pick this up and understand it, and kind of like maybe like a waking dog that's all of a sudden wakes up and lifts up his head and says, "Oh, what was that?" Right? That's where the messaging that I'm talking about is being heard. If anybody's trying to understand what I'm saying in beta frequencies, they've checked out a long time ago, because it's frustrating them to the point of they call it gobbledygook, because you simply can't understand it.
Right. So, kind of walk us through the process. So, a client comes to you, tells you, they want to get into this red pill delusion. Each one has their own individual journey through this, but how do you get started with that? Great
question. I just did a training to some of my coaches on that the other night, but we have a simple 15-minute a free 15-minute session that we do with anyone who may be interested in learning more, where we connect their mind consciousness beta frequencies with their inner heart consciousness theta frequencies. It's kind of like a left and right handshake, right? It's like you think of putting your left and right hand together and locking your hands together. That's what happens from a consciousness perspective. And from wherever point that meeting is, if it be through the mind, a lot of times it's in the heart area, right? The heart consciousness. From there, we then help them to be able to, I call it the golden thread, connect their golden thread from that point, run it down through their body, through their legs, through their feet, into the earth, and connect with the center of the earth,
mm-hmm.
and move it back to their heart consciousness. And if a person is able to do that, and I'm going to tell you that with the thousands of people that I've worked with, roughly 50% of the people that have had the free session with us are able to do that. The other 50% are not. If a person is able to do that, we know they're ready, because the work that we do is in that theta frequency FM zone. It's not within the AM dot. If a person tries to get there through their mind, they're never going to be able to do it. I remember I was talking to a person who was a high-profile person in the movie industry, and like very high profile, like putting together these things and these movies. Um, and she was not able to even begin the process. Because the first thing that we have to do is we have to slow a person's consciousness down. We have to move them out of the mind's beta frequency consciousness speed into the heart consciousness's theta consciousness speed.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some simple steps that we do. The first one involves becoming connected with the energetic aspect of what each breath we take does. In other words, I have a person visualize the energetic happenings that each breath is doing. In other words, the white light energy that comes in, that moves through their cells, their organs, cleanses them, and exhale is back out. And I remember I usually just do that in 15 minutes, but she wanted me to work with her because there's a lot going on, but in her life.
Mm-hmm.
But for 3 hours, which is the most I've ever tried doing this with anybody before, she tried to do that because she knew that this was so significant. She was getting the internal promptings from the inside that yes, this is what has to be done. But she was unable to do that because she was so stuck in her beta consciousness frequencies from her mind that she couldn't even begin to understand the energetic application of what each breath does. And so this is not for everybody. And there are many people on the planet that unfortunately will have to die until the spirit brings back their final life incarnation to complete the process. But there are many people on the planet right now that are final life experience souls. And I know that I'm one of them. Even though I've died, I didn't want to come back. I know that's where we're going, and I know that's where mankind is going. But I also know that by the year 2082, when the birth process begins, every human being alive, and as you know, there are 8 billion people on the planet right now. Every person alive will become one as source in its totality, so that life can begin. The only question I cannot answer that's already been completed in the Great Thought is, are you, as you look yourself in the mirror and into the mirror now, and I'm talking to your audience,
Mm-hmm.
are you your spirit's final life soul, right? If you're not, well, you're just not. You're going to die, and your spirit will bring back your final life experience, so it will happen. But many people alive today are. And so it's just an internal all-knowingness that your inner life force and your spirit will be prompting you with. It's just an undeniable feeling. Many people have described it to me as a kind of like a fire from within, right in the heart area. They can feel a blaze, a bliss, a happiness, a joy, just building within them, right? And so, again, if people are trying to understand this from the mind, haven't got a chance. It can only come from listening to the FM dial of your theta consciousness frequency. Does that make sense?
Yes. So how does one, I guess, find out if they're on their final life?
Well, it begins with that free 15-minute session, right? Just give myself or one of my coaches contact us and via email. When I work with people, and I work with people all over the world, we do it all through audio. We never invade a person's privacy by having any cameras or anything live on them or live on us. Everything is done audibly, and so everybody has complete privacy and are safe. But it also, just doing everything audibly also allows us to pick up through the tenor of a person's voice any trepidations or any inflections that they may not know is happening, and so we've become, all of our coaches have become experts on understanding that, but it's just a matter of contacting us. Just send us an email, email us and say, we've got some videos out there. I'd like to have a free assessment. YouTube, we've got YouTube videos out there. So all the social media platforms are touching everybody on the planet.
Okay, so let's talk about infinite intelligence and the paranormal. You'd mentioned earlier that this kind of just explains the whole paranormal aspect in the whole here. So,
sorry. I didn't understand that word you said. Did you say parallel or parable?
Paranormal.
Paranormal. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Absolutely. I'd love to touch on that, because what I'm about to explain to you is something your audience has never heard. And again, I'm coming at this from an infinite intelligence perspective. From an infinite intelligence perspective, infinite intelligence is the normal. We are living in the paranormal. We are actually that paranormal. In other words, we are not the normal sensory channels of normalcy, of infinite intelligence. We're going to move into that, but we are the paranormal. Infinite intelligence has no pain. Infinite intelligence has no stress. Infinite intelligence has no darkness. Okay? We are the paranormal because through the energy of fear and negativity, that's what we live in. And aspects that I'm sure you've interviewed people call the paranormal, if it be the ETs, if it be unseen elements of anything. The reason why an individual sees an ET, encounters an ET, or anything like that, is because those ETs have come from other universes to this planet to witness what we're doing. Because we, Earth, universe, humanity, in the Great Thought, are the life force that makes everything happen. And what I also saw in the Great Thought is we, Adam, you, me, JC, our spirits and our life forces and our souls are just not limited to this universe. We are actually living simultaneously. Our spirits and souls are living simultaneously in every other parallel universe that exists. So when someone sees an ET, when someone encounters an ET, they are encountering themselves from other universes. In other words, those other universes have sent out their recognizance team. It's a simple way that I always put this, to watch and monitor what we're doing. Okay, I've had many clients who have had encounters with other intelligence, and they're never the same either. They're like a near death, right? But they're never the same. But the reason why they happen is to help the individual to get to this point that I'm talking about now, of moving out of the blue pill into the red pill, right? Some of the more intelligences within the parallel universes, and our intelligence, and I don't mean to shatter anybody's realities here, but from a top-down perspective, our intelligence level is right in the middle. Okay, in other words, there are 49.99% of higher intelligences that are living in other universes, and they're the ones that are bringing us the ETs that in interactions that people have. But there are also 49.99% of intelligences that are less intelligent than what we are. But the totality of it all is what source is. And we are actually alive in all of those intelligences right now. So whenever I've heard so many stories of clients who have had those, and some of them have been very, very gruesome. I remember one lady had been raised by. I had heard that she had been raised by two satanic parents who sold her off into a young age into a child pedophile ring, and she was subjected to a whole bunch of terrible things through that. And but I remember saying, unfortunately nothing happens with chance, and all of that was meant to happen. But there are many unseen, unknown elements that are happening, and trust me, living here in Sedona, I've seen them at nights regularly since I've been here. But from an intelligence perspective, and I'm talking about an infinite intelligence perspective, not a limiting mind consciousness perspective that we all live in through our mind prison, but from an infinite intelligence perspective, we know a very, very, very small fraction of the percentage of what infinite intelligence is. And as I said, it's my journey's been 24 years, and I dare to say that I'm only remembering a fraction of the everythingness that I was shown. But as every day goes on, more and more of it is revealed, and that's what happens. Does that make sense?
It does. So we've come to the end of our show. JC, where can people find you?
Well, they can find me in Sedona, Arizona. That's where I live. But I have a social media presence. My website is theredpillzone.com. My YouTube channel is The Red Pill Zone. I'm on Facebook under my name, JC Gordon. I'm also on I have an Instagram account as well. So all of the social media platforms. But the best place would be to probably go to theredpillzone.com and just hit the contact, which is an email us for a free 15-minute sessions with myself or one of my infinite intelligence coaches.
All right, great. JC, stay on the line, and I'll get with you after the show. And thanks again for coming on and sharing with us your experience.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. Hope it's helped.
Oh yes, it has. Thank you. Next week we'll have Marilyn Hughes back with us to talk about her experiences with out-of-body travel. We're going to be talking about spirits and spiritual warfare. So make sure you catch that with us. That'll be the 23rd at 4 p.m. Thank you so much for coming and listening to us today, and we will see you next time. As always, stay safe and stay healthy.
If you enjoyed our show tonight, head on over to Paranormal Engaged on Facebook and stay up to date on the latest news. And don't forget to click that like button. To find more about upcoming shows and guest information, stop by www.paranormalengaged.com. Paranormal Engaged can be found on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, and can be played on Alexa with a Podbean skill.